What's up, crypto crew? I'm going to show you how to build a GPU mining rig, so let's go. Alright guys, now I'm going to show you how to build a GPU mining rig. So I've showed you before in a previous video the difference between the GPU miners, the ASIC miners, and all the other different types out there. Now you can see in the back there's a couple of those miners going right now, but what I'm going to do is build it from scratch so you guys can see. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the platform I'm going to use to actually attach all this stuff down to. And for me, that's just one of these cheap Kmart racks. So if I make some room. So the reason why I go for these racks is not only are they cheap, but they're all standard sizes. You can rack them all up just like you can see in the back here. It's easy to just move stuff around, and because there's gaps in between, you don't have to worry about airflow. It's easy to get cables all around and up through, and it's easy to tie stuff down as well onto the actual rack. The only downside to these racks is that they are metal. Electronics sitting on metal, not so good. So what we're going to have to do is get something to raise the actual electronics off the metal. Now on some of the components they do have a backing on it, but for things like the motherboard, I'm going to need to put something underneath, and usually I just use a piece of wood. Luckily for me, I've got heaps of MDF lying around in the shed out the back. I guess you could really use whatever you want as long as it doesn't conduct electricity. You can build these computers inside a normal computer case. The only downsides to that would be that you've got airflow restriction. Unless you're pumping a lot of air through with the fans, tend to actually have issues then with your graphics cards being too close together that you can't get the airflow through. I'm not saying that you can't do it, you can. It's just that fitting 6 graphics cards into a PC case and having that all flowing with the proper airflow is a lot more difficult, and you got a lot more cabling and stuff like that in that one confined space. That's why I like to have it open setup like you can see back here. It's easier, then you can cable tie down wires and things like that. So there's a lot of videos online of people showing you how to set these up. Now the main difference between a lot of those videos and mine, you see a lot of these people going through and showing you all their brand new equipment and such. I do the complete opposite. Now the reason for that is being that if you're going to go out there and spend all that money on brand new equipment, okay, yes, you might get the warranties and such, but the outlay that you put forward to actually get all that equipment is a lot higher. Some of the graphics cards that I've actually been getting are about a third of the price of a lot of these other people that are going out there and getting graphics cards. And even, motherboards, Chinese motherboards do exactly the same thing. I haven't had an issue with any of these yet. And I've been mining on some of these for over 6 months now. So just do your research on what you're actually after, and I can do some reviews on some of these products as well, but just don't get caught up in going to your local computer shop and throwing a few $1,000s just to get a mining rig set up, because at the end of the day it's going to take you a lot longer to actually recoup that money back. We have our motherboard. For most people, when they get scared about building computers, I'm not too fussed. I've been pretty rough with all of them and not had an issue yet. What I'm going to do is cable tie these things down. So this is getting really DIY backyard. I need to make sure that wherever I'm putting this stuff, there's going to be enough room for everything. Now in this case, I'm not going to be building a 6 GPU setup on here. I'm just going to do a few parts and then set it up as a bit of a test rig. So if I'm testing any new components, I can just connect it up to this computer once I know that this computer is working, and then I can move on. So what I'm going to do is actually install this CPU. So this CPU I picked up for about $50 off eBay or something like that. Like if you're going out and buying a brand new CPU, it can cost you a lot more than that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is put the CPU in to the socket, make sure the pins line up over it fine, and put that down. Now with the fan, I have a cheap CPU cooler. Now with mining rigs, the CPUs don't use much processing power to mine. It's all done on the GPUs, so I'm not too fussed about the cooling because it's not going to get too hot. Now that that's done, CPU fan, plonk it on the top, pop it on, cooler's on. Plug goes in, but what I'm going to do first. Alright, we got the camera switched around so you guys can see. The plug itself for the fan goes in the top here. Now, the other thing I'm going to try and make sure I do first is put the memory in, because that looks quite tight to get in there. And what I've got is this motherboard's DDR3, so I've got 2 sticks of Patriot memory. Now they're 4 gig each. I haven't really done a test on overkill of using memory, but I might do that in another video. So we'll just get these in, make sure we line them up properly. Now the next thing we want to do is attach the motherboard down. I just make sure that wherever I place the motherboard, that it's not in the way of the legs that would be coming up through the side. So what I want to do first is make sure everything's in position before I start tying these down. So we want to make sure that there's even weight across the board, so it's not bending in the center, or especially when you're pushing those plugs in, it can kind of bend in the middle, so we want to stop that from happening. And then once we're happy, we just pull it down. And don't tie it up too tight so it damages the board, but once we get that nice and snug, I tie it all around, and then I just snip everything off just to make it nice and neat. So the next thing we want to install is the solid state hard drive. Now you can use a regular hard drive, but it's the less moving parts the better, and you can get some of these hard drives pretty cheap, and this one's 120 gig, but I have used 60 gig hard drives before, and that's mainly just for the operating system and for the mining software. So what I'm going to do with this is cable tie it down, because I love my cable ties. Now I usually put it face up so the writing's showing upwards, that way it's easy to put the connectors in. So that's not going anywhere in a hurry, but at least I can push it out if I need to replace it or do something. So I now connect up all the connectors and plug that into the motherboard, and I'll just tuck this one away somewhere. Now the beauty of having this open frame design is you can just run stuff underneath and just get it out of the way, and then just cable tie stuff down if you need to. So the next thing to do is install the graphics card. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either plug it into the motherboard, which you'll only get one in there, or you can run PCI risers. So a PCI riser looks like this. Now basically it's the exact same as the motherboard, but you can place it anywhere you want, and it runs via the USB. So you plug it in with this cable, and then this other end will click into your motherboard, and you can run up to the amount that's up on the motherboard. So I'll be looking in future about how I can extend that further, but in this case all I'm going to do is line it up roughly and click it in, and I'll just need to be careful about where the power supply will fit. So temporarily I'll just place everything in, see if we can fit it all. So I know roughly that it's about 10 mil away from the motherboard. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is, on this PCI riser, you can see on the back where the foam is, and I'm going to need to cut out some holes through here so I can get the cable ties through. Now I'm just going to grind out a little bit here, and I've got some smaller cable ties. Now I'll just attach that on. So the USB we can connect into the back of here, and then we can run that across and just clip that into the motherboard. Now the same thing again, like the SATA cable, we can just run that under. Now we also have a connector here off the back which is for the power. These PCI risers are powered, so you don't want to use the ribbon ones which look like this. You can use them, but they do tend to break down more easier. So you would go off like that to your graphics card, but they're quite well known for breaking down. Alright, so what we need to do now is connect up all the power. So what I've got here is a 750 watt Corsair power supply. Quite a reliable power supply, and this is definitely overkill for this test rig. So usually I'd just attach it, but I'm just going to have it sitting there on the rack, and I'll just connect up all the power connectors. Now in the case where you'd have up to 6 graphics cards, you can get like a splitter power supply plug which would trick 2 power supplies into thinking that they're one. You can also get additional power supplies like this, which is like a HP power supply out of a server, and you would have a breakout board similar to this which would run out to those other graphics cards. So I'll show you in another video how to do that, but in this one we're just going to run one power supply to run one motherboard and one graphics card and go from there. Now, as you'll start to see, it can get quite messy with all the cables, so I like to tie them down or hide them underneath the rack if possible. Sometimes it's a bit too hard to do that because of how thick the cable might be, but you just try different ways and see how you go. Now here I'm also going to install the switch for the power on. Now I just cable tie that down to the front of the rack, but just make sure that you've got one of those switches on there, because otherwise it'll be a bit hard to start and stop the computer if you need to do maintenance on it. Now I'm just plugging in all the power leads and the mouse and keyboard, network cable and the screen. And that's about it. We should be good. Alright guys, thanks for watching the build of this video. Now I've got another video that shows me switching the test rig on and actually getting it up and running, so check that one out. But thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, hit that like button. You can also subscribe by hitting the button up here, and you can also join the Discord channel below in the link. Now they've got 2 other videos up here for you to watch, and I've got my personal channel over on this side. So thanks for watching again, we'll see you next time.